Hey YouTube, welcome back to the BladesIIB shop and a Fusion Flicker, just a short Fusion 360 video on something I learned as I've been working on these pallets and thought it'd be worth sharing with everybody else. If you've been keeping up on my YouTube channel, I've been working on this Pierson Pro Pallet system. I've been making several pallets. I've got a couple of them complete and finally got to where I was going to use one of the pallets. I was actually making a couple of knife handle slabs, but it's the same pallet overall that I was going to use. I used this pallet to hold 2x5" titanium blanks and machine out various handle slabs. I also make my bottle openers with it. So when I went to go put this into operation, I did a rigid joint and I stuck my design onto the pallet. And then I went down here to the manufacturer side and I did what I've been doing up to this point with stock when holding one thing in the vise. And I went in here and set up my stock. So I selected the body, gonna machine that. And for the stock, I was using a relative size box and I built my stock around my object like I normally have. I've got 10 thou above, 10 thou below, but I quickly realized that 10 thou below is actually just down inside my pallet. Since I am machining from a single point of origin, I'm not probing to my actual piece. So I really need this piece of material and I need my stock to sit in the right position relative to this single point of origin since I'm not going to probe on it up here. The bottom line is this was not going to work. This not putting it in the right place as I had hoped. Though there's another option on here called machine from a solid. That's what I actually need to do. But before I can machine from a solid, I actually have to create the solid and then I can go and select that solid. Did a little bit of research, a little bit of reading. Let's go back to the design side here. So I need to actually build some material directly around my part, have that built for what size stock that I want to use. So let me go ahead and get this back off here so that we can do a little bit of design. So let me delete that joint that's holding it in place. Select my item. Gonna just move that really quick. Get that off here where it's a little easier to work on. So let me see where I've got that sitting. We'll get that up above. And we'll get it just off to the side enough that it's easy to work with. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn on this other sketch that I had with it. And again, we're gonna build some stock directly around this now for the size that we want. And that way we can then use joints onto our stock and put that in place exactly where we want that to be. Now you'll notice I only have one of these set up on here. I'm gonna do a pattern. So once I get this on there and do the cam side, I'm gonna pattern it across and pattern it down. That's why I only need to put it in one place. And in order to figure out where to lock it in place, I just dropped a point, measured over. That's where I've got that hole. That's what is going to allow me to do a joint into here. So now to build our stock, I want to go to create. First, I want to make sure I select it. So I've got our right item selected. That'll keep my joints in the right place. That's also going to keep the new body that I create. It's going to keep it in the right place so that all of that stays together. So I want to create a sketch and I want the sketch to be right on the surface of this. And then I want to create a point. And basically I'm going to build a rectangle, but I want my point off here where I know the stock needs to be. So let me just drop that in place and then we're going to dimension that. So I know that I want that to be 0.5955 above that hole. All right, so that's where the top of my stock is going to be. And then I also know that I want that to be 2.431 over from this side. So that should give me somewhere around 800 thou of material off of this edge and about 200 thou of material off of this edge. So then for my last piece, I want to create a 2-point rectangle and I'm using stock that is 2 inches by 5 inches. So I create my stock and that looks right. I've got a couple hundred thou over here, about 800 thou over here. We should be centered up on the top and the bottom on that piece. So that looks about like the stock. So let me go ahead and finish my sketch right there. And then I want to select that. And now I want to do a typical press pull, but instead of going from one side, I actually want to do this two-sided. And I want to go up 0.010. I want to go up that 10 thou up on the top. And then the other side, I want to go my 180 thou. So that gives me the 190 thou thickness. My design is 170. That gives me 10 above, 10 below. I've set my offsets on each side and centered in between. Now the trick here is I don't want to cut this. I want it to be a new body is what I want to create. So I want to create a new body around my piece and then I'm going to hit OK. You see over here we now have a new body. I'm going to go ahead and name that really quick because I need to make 2 new bodies in order to be able to do both sides of this the way I need to. So I'm going to call this stock 10 up and 10 down so that I know I've got material on both sides, and I'm going to hit enter. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the opacity on this to 30% so that I'm going to be able to see through this and actually see my stock inside of there. So there we go. Now I have my stock designed so that I have stock around this. So I'm going to use a joint and I'm going to lock that in place. And now I'm going to set the joint off the stock and not off of my actual design so that it'll be holding it 10 thou up off the pallet and we can go in there and do the design. Now, in my case, for this one, I need to flip it over. I need to machine 10 thou off of one of these sides and then flip it over before I machine the other side. I could just kind of trick it and leave this in place and it be sticking up 20 thou. But I'm going to go ahead and just design another one real quick so that I don't lose track of what I'm doing on the cam side of it. So I'm going to go ahead and make another piece of stock that is 10 thou up, and then it goes flush onto the bottom so that it'll sit directly on the pallet is where I'm going to need that to sit for the second operation that I'm going to machine on here. So let me go ahead and make that really quick, and then we'll come back and we'll put the joint on this, and we'll get this locked in place, and I'll show you how that's going to work on the cam side. So to make my other one, I'm just going to hide that one now really quick. Make sure that I've selected this again. I create another sketch. Again, I want it right up on top of this eagle. And pretty much just doing the same thing. I'm just not going to have as much stock on it. All right, I'm going to finish my sketch. Same thing on this. I want to go 2 directions. I want to go up 10. This time I'm only going to go down 170, so it's just going to be flush on the bottom. And then same thing, I want to make sure that that is a new body. And I've got another new body over here, so now this is going to be stock 10 up only. And set the opacity on that at 30% as well. And there we go. So now I just need to make sure I'm keeping track of which stock, which body I have turned on at which time. So for right now, I want to turn that one off. I want to put this one on, and we'll go and set up and do the cam on this one first. But in order to keep it easy for me to line it up, I'm going to go ahead and drop a hole in here really quick. So I'm just going to put a 1/4 inch hole. I'm going to put that all the way through. And you'll notice that if I go look at that from the top, it's not actually, it's opaque so I can see it, but there's still a hole here on the bottom because of the 10 thou that we went up from that other sketch. So let me just delete that real quick, and then we have a hole all the way through. So again, this is the stock 10 up and 10 down. I want to assemble this now onto my pallet. We're going to do a joint, get to where I can get to the underside of this. Select that one, get on the top, select my piece up here. Okay, we've got that set up where we want it. And now you can see that my stock is not going down into my pallet, and we're sticking up here the right amount. So just to double check that, get somewhere where we can measure here. We can actually see that we've got 10 thou sticking up above, and we should have a total of, the slot is 150 thou deep, so the design is 170 thou, but with our material here, it's 190. My slot's 150, so I should have 40 thou above here if I measure this now. So if I go here to measure, we should get 40 thou up above. And we do, we get our 40 thou. So we know that we're sitting on the pallet correctly this time. We're where we want to be. Now when we go down to the manufacturer side, before we were creating this from relative size stock. I've just got that in there so you can see what that looks like. We've got our 2 operations we're going to do. Our first operation is going to be on this first side of the piece. We need to take 10 thou off before we flip it over, and then we'll have to flip it to the other side. We'll come back to that in a minute. So if we go in here to this first operation where we're starting with a piece of material 20 thou thick, which is the stock we just designed, I want to go in here and I'm going to edit that. And just like what you would do before, we've got our single point of origin that's already set down here. My model body, that is already set. My fixture body, that's already set. So all of that is still good, no change. It's when I come over here to the stock, we've got that relative sized box, and now we want to change this to, we want to machine it from a solid. Right now, nothing is selected. I could try to select this solid right here, that would work. I just find that when you've got multiple pieces, I find it's easier if I just go up here to my model and let's make sure that we're getting the right piece. So if I go in here to that bottle opener, I want the stock 10 thou up and 10 thou down. So I want to go ahead and select it from over here just to make sure that I get the right piece that I want, not accidentally getting the wrong one. That should be 190 thou thick, so that looks like we've got the right piece. My post-process is already set up. So now I'm going to hit OK. So now we have the right size piece. It's in our pallet where we want it to be. And now I can just quickly go in here and do the machining. So I've already got this. Tool is already selected. Now that I've got my body in there, I need to select the geometry. I want to go in there and face that piece. Leave my heights. I've got everything else good. My step overs. 0.3, I want it going off the end so I don't end up with a little partial machining mark on there. Machine both ways. We're good. So that's going to go in there and machine and face that off for that first piece. Now I want to pattern that across the rest of my pallet. So to do that, I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to add to new pattern. I want to create a new pattern and I want to do a linear pattern because I want to go linear across and then down. So for my first direction, I want to go across on the x-axis. The distance I need to go is 5.878 for this pallet. And it went off the wrong way, so I need to flip that direction. That brings it over here, puts it exactly where I need that to be. Now I needed 2 instances, so I've got my 2. I need to add a direction. This time I want to go down that y-axis, and I need to go 3.185. I need 3 instances this time. And we can see that went the wrong way again, so I need to flip that as well. And there we go. Now I have all 6 instances of that pattern going across there. I'm going to hit OK. And we can do just a quick simulation on that. Make sure that that's going to go across all these different places. You can see that's going to hit all 6 of those. Give them a quick face on there on that first side and we're done. So we have this first piece done. Now I need a different set of stock and I need to go ahead and I'm going to go back to the design side because I need to use the joint and lock that other piece of stock in place where I want it. But you can see if I zoom in right here, I no longer have stock going down below my pallet like we had last time. So that is locked in there the right way. It's sitting up 10 thou. We're taking 10 thou off the top. We're good. Now, technically, this would be, we're flipping it over, so it would be upside down. My eagle will be facing the other way. I didn't go ahead and flip any of that around because it's just inside the stock still. We're just machining one piece, but that is what it would technically look like, and then we're going to flip it over to be this way. So now let's go back to the design side, and let's get our other piece of stock locked in place where we need it, and we'll come back and get that one manufactured. So first, I want to delete this joint so that I can move my stock. I want to select my piece of stock, move, and I just want to get this out of the way enough that I'll be able to select it on the back side to be able to get the next joint set up. I'm going to hit OK, and now I'm going to turn off that piece of stock that's 10 up and 10 down, and I want to turn on the other piece of stock that's 10 thou up only. That is now the one that I want to lock in position, so the design itself will now be flat down on this surface, and I'm only going to have extra stock up top. So let's assemble that into a new joint. And I'll flip this over where I can get to this. I want that right on the end. Go back in here to my other piece. And I'll select that joint. We should be good. Just to verify again, let's go back over here. Yeah, I can see that I have 10 thou of material sticking up. Let's do another measure. And this time, instead of 40 thou, we should only have 30 thou right here. And we do. We only have 30 thou. So once again, our piece is sitting where we want it to on the pallet. It's sitting in the right place. We'll go back down to our manufacturer side. And if I look at this setup, remember this setup, it still says I've got 190 thou worth of stock because it selected the other piece. I'm not going to change anything there. When I look at this setup now, we're going to edit this one, and it's still set up from a piece of stock. We have the right body selected. It's still from a relative size box, so now we're going to change that to we want to machine it from a solid. And I want to go in here, and now I want to select this other body where it's 10 up only. That's why you want to make sure you're naming your bodies in here when you're doing this so you know exactly which one you're going to grab. And then I'm going to hit, or we'll double check so you can see we're back to 180 thou piece of stock. Going to hit OK. Looking from the top. It is in our pallet in the right place. We're lined up. And now we're ready to go through and set up the cam on this one. So let me go ahead and do that. That'll take a couple of minutes, but I will come back afterwards after I get the cam set up on this, and I will just show you once again how we're going to take all of this at one time and create a pattern, kind of like what we did up there. Except we only have to do it once. I can take all of these operations and create the pattern at one time and show you how I do that, and then we'll have this one ready to go and ready to machine. So see you back here in a moment after I get all the cam done on this. All right, so I got the cam complete on this. We're going to go through to that facing operation, drill the hole for the eyeball, bore out that hole for the bottle opener, go around and profile this, just going halfway down so that we don't get rid of all the material. We'll get that from the other side so that we've got something to clamp to. And then we will go all the way through the slots in the wings. Then we'll do a little chamfer on there, chamfer around the eyeball. So now that I have all of that cam complete, I'm going to select all of that at one time. And I'm going to add that to a new pattern. Go ahead and get on the top here so we can see what's happening. And do it just pretty much like how we did it before. So first direction, I want to go across. And I know I need to flip the direction. Going to go 5.878 again. That's going to move that over to our other slot. And then our second direction. Oh, and I want 2 instances. That's already set. Additional direction. I want to go down. So I need to change that direction again. And I want to go down 3.185 for this pallet. And instead of 2, I want 3 instances. And there we go. We just cammed that once, patterned that across, and we are good. So we'll hit OK. Get that in there. So again, I apologize. I'm not a little faster in Fusion, so this video may have been a little jerky and choppy. I tried to put it all back together to keep it fairly smooth, but I think we conveyed the point, which is once you have a pallet, you can't just take joints, drop it on there, and do stock like you were thinking around stock in a vise. You really need to think about your stock, build that around your part as a separate body, and then make sure that it's your stock that you're dropping onto your pallet in the right place. If you're flipping things over, you may have to build stock a couple of times to make sure that you have all of those right distances and everything on there. There may be other ways to do this, but it's been working for me. And for me, I just put a point on my pallet, maybe a hole, align that to a point that I have on my part, and that's what I have to drop that in. I guess I could use a joint and drop it in on this edge, and then maybe another edge to line it up. I just find it's easier. I know I'm getting in the right place if I'm dropping it off of a point. But again, I'm sure there's multiple ways to do this, but hopefully this little Fusion flicker was helpful. If you're using pallets, using any other form of multiple work offsets, hopefully you got something out of here and it will make it a little bit easier for you. Well, we can't end this video without cleaning up a couple of the mistakes. So as I was going through and doing that, you noticed that I had my pattern distance wrong. So thankfully, it's really easy to go in here and edit a pattern, create your pattern. All you do is you right click on that, you hit edit, and I had 5.878 and it should be 5.740. So I went in there, just changed that. You can continue to edit your pattern. I could remove different instances if I was only going to machine a couple on a pallet or fewer of them. So you can quickly go in there and edit your pattern to be able to do that. And when we go in there and take a look, now you'll see that it's nice and centered up in the middle, and that's working better. The other piece to fix this design, I really need to have 2 different instances of this pallet because I'm changing a joint and locking it down. So I went ahead and duplicated my overall design, and that way I can go in here and I can edit the machining and the manufacture for doing just this initial facing operation, and go in here and hit the other pallet, the other design, because again, I've got a joint locked on. Otherwise, every time I would want to go and do that, I have to go to the design side, change that joint. That would mess up the tool pass. I actually deleted the other operation off of here, so now I only have 1 machining op on each pallet, but it changes it. So if you're going to go post-process, you're going to just keep on messing up one design in order to edit or fix the other one. So this is, I think, a much cleaner, better hygiene way of doing it, is having 1 pallet setup for the top side, 1 pallet setup for the bottom side, and that way you can keep track. You can go in there and make edits without messing up the other operation. So clean that up a little bit, and I think that makes for a pretty good video. Hopefully you got something out of this one on how to use a pallet, how to make sure you're building your stock around your part, how to machine from stock, and then of course how to make sure a pattern across your pallet. So same thing, I went in there and edited this pattern, and you can see now we're not touching up on the side. That's much better spacing, the better distance on there. Hey, if you're new to this BladesIIB channel, I encourage you to go check out some of the other videos on the channel on fusion, machining, welding, knife making, just everything else going on in the BladesIIB shop. And would really encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you liked this video, drop a like, drop a comment. Would love to hear from you. For those of you subscribed to the channel, sure appreciate you watching these. And until next time, I hope you're out in your own shop working on some projects of your own. I'll be here in the BladesIIB shop working on that next pallet, working on getting ready to go to this Blade show in Atlanta in June. Hope to see you there. Until then, y'all take care.